Buddy, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm really glad you're here back on the show. I know you had you here on the show talking about cults, about myths and stuff, but this is a totally different subject. I know this has been a super controversial one. It's been blowing up in the news. So let's start at the beginning first. For maybe some people that are coming in and they're just reading headlines or just not knowing what's going on, take me to the beginning of this story. How did you come across the story?
It started when the first allegations started coming out against Harvey Weinstein. And somebody at medium.com published a list of celebrities who had been accused of sexual misconduct, rape, and other lists of allegations. And it was a very small article, not very reputable. It had some bad names on there. It listed Daniel Tosh because he made rape jokes. So that was listed along with these other people. But one of them was Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it said he had been accused of rape. And it had a link that I followed to a woman named Shia Ahmet, who I started looking into her blogs and talking with her and eventually recording a 30-minute interview with her.
Okay, so take me back to that interview for some people that may not have. Actually, I had a chance to actually listen to it, but give me some of the details and some of the backstory on that.
Definitely. I published one story before that, just alerting people to the existence of this allegation. She says that Neil deGrasse Tyson raped her when they were both grad students at UT Austin. Before I published anything, I confirmed that they did go to school together at the same time. I also confirmed some other basic things that I could. And then I wanted to see if anybody else could help with anything and provide any other context here. So I decided to talk to her, and I learned, I basically just asked her questions any journalist would ask somebody in that situation: what they did, what happened next, how she felt about the situation, whether she had been public about it. I found out that she had filed a police report in the past, but it didn't get investigated because it was outside of the 10-year statute of limitations in Texas. I found out that she had told therapists, and she gave me their names, and I found out other details that I broadcast in that interview, and that's what spawned these other people to come forward and contact me about different but semi-related sexual misconduct allegations.
What gave you the like when you first came across her? What gave you the impression that she was a credible person? Because a lot of people make accusations saying these women are just making stuff up. But what gave you the impression that she was a credible witness?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that I know that she's a credible witness. However, I will say that I don't take spiritual beliefs into account when it comes to the credibility of a witness. I feel like most human beings have some sort of supernatural or spiritual belief of some kind. And that doesn't make them any less stable than the rest of us. And so I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt that she had a story that she believed that she wanted to tell. And I couldn't find anything to contradict any of her claims that she made, including that she publicly addressed these claims in 2010 at an event, a Neil deGrasse Tyson event. She stood up in front of a huge audience, PBS Nova crowd, and said this and said that he raped her. And that was in 2010, long before any of the stuff that other people were talking about. So it's definitely a long-running issue. And like you said before, as a huge fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson's work, I wanted to put it out there to debunk it initially. I wanted to put her information out there so we could find some way to put an end to these accusations once and for all. And that'd be it, But when I started writing the articles, I didn't want to have any agenda, so I just kind of dropped that from the report and just went with the facts that I know. Here's what she said. Here's what the school records say. What else can we do? And when I did that audio interview, I was surprised by how coherent and responsive Shia was. Her writing style is different, and she's not as good of a writer as she is a speaker. And so when I talked to her in that interview, it really gave me a new sense of the allegations, even better than her blog posts did.
Tell me a little bit about too, because I know you just brought up her whole spirituality thing, and people may be like, well, why is that relevant? And maybe some people are watching this for the first time and don't really know about, being a skeptic and stuff. Why is that important?
I feel like the spiritual beliefs in general, to me, I considered irrelevant to this entire thing, just because there are a number of reasons why someone might pick up spiritual beliefs, and one of those things could include a trauma. I've actually worked with a private investigator on this very case who told me that there are cases where a trauma like that, like the one alleged, could happen and could lead someone down a path that we saw there. I don't make any judgments on any of that, but I didn't exclude her testimony just because of her beliefs, which a lot of people I've seen doing, and I just don't agree with that.
This story, unfortunately, talks about an incident where she was, I'm not mistaken, she was either drugged or put to sleep, I believe, and whatever. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because that's the first thing that caught my eye when you're talking about that. It's one thing that we're just talking about allegation, but that's a serious, serious charge. Can you talk a little bit about what her story was with that?
Yeah, she says that she met Neil deGrasse Tyson in the 80s when they were both in grad school. They became acquaintances, but she didn't like him all that much. She kind of thought he was arrogant. And then they were hanging out one day. He offered her water, and the next thing she remembers was waking up to a sexual assault. And then she remembers waking up again, and that it's the next day. So memory missing there that she's kind of assuming was drug related.
Gotcha. And then what was his response when confronted with it? I remember you're talking about like at the Nova thing. It doesn't seem like, did any tapes or anything come from that? Did anybody happen to record it? Have you heard anything about that?
I can't comment about that right now, but there might be something about that in the future.
Okay, gotcha. Let's go into the other two accusers, and the reason why I say that is because it's one thing that it may be one person who accuses us of something, and that's already bad enough. I don't downplay this at all, but I always figure when it comes to human behavior, usually it's habitual, and usually we find out there's more than one person, and that's exactly what happened. So talk to me about these two new accusers that just came out.
One of them is Ashley Watson, who worked for Neil deGrasse Tyson at Cosmos as his assistant just this past summer, very recently, within the last 6 months. And she says that he came on to her sexually inappropriately in his apartment late at night while serving wine, something that she thinks and others think a celebrity of his stature should know kind of is already towing the line with your personal assistant. But her allegations have so far been confirmed by Tyson in that he remembers that night. He remembers her approaching him the next day to say that she felt uncomfortable and, quote, creeped out in his own words. And he confirmed that she quit the next day after that. So basically, her story has been confirmed and has been further reported on by New York Times and NPR, who also spoke with Ashley Watson.
Excellent. And you also, and I just want to also mention too, before we go any further, you have an actual audio interview of the first individual that's actually online, and I'll link that here. And obviously the articles that we're talking about are going to be linked in the description below, and please make sure that you guys actually check that out too. So she, at that point she had confronted Neil deGrasse Tyson, and again, no response.
Yeah, she says that at the time, at that night, that she talked to him and said, and kind of tried to diffuse the situation, and that he didn't really understand what was happening. Her words were, it was like talking to a wall. And then when she talked to him the next day, according to his account, he apologized and she accepted his apology, and they hugged and left. Regardless of what transpired there, she definitely quit her job. She felt that she was no longer okay or comfortable working there, and she quit her job that day. And the New York Times spoke with one of the producers of Cosmos as well, who further elaborated and said that when she left, she said it was a family emergency. And I asked what kind of family emergency, and she said just a family emergency. Repeated it again, and then it said that the look on her face was that she was ashamed of the family emergency. And so I just felt like that was an interesting and relevant quote to bring up.
Yeah, and this is what I find interesting about it. I'm going to go into this a little bit about the rebuttal that Neil deGrasse Tyson has, which he has, and I do have a link to that here for people that actually want to check that out. I gave him a fair shot at that, but I definitely want to talk about it because there's a lot of things that he actually says happen, not exactly what happened. I want to talk about that, but there's one more person that you mentioned here also.
Yep, that was Dr. Allers, who in 2009 took a photo with Neil deGrasse Tyson at an American Astronomical Society meeting, an after party after a meeting. And we posted the photos of the event of them taking pictures and of him examining her arm. And she approached me after the story as well and told me that she had reported this to her school, Bucknell University, prior to any of this. Before ever hearing of anything, she thought that it was relevant to bring up when Neil deGrasse Tyson was invited to her school. She felt it was relevant to say that when he was looking at her tattoo, he lifted up her shirt or dress, her sleeve here, and explored further to see if there was Pluto underneath on the solar system, which she says she could have just answered it wasn't on there, and but that wasn't what happened. And so she had reported it to her superiors at the university before, and she just provided a very basic account and said she doesn't want to go further than that, but that everything I said in my story is accurate and that she has reported it before. So it kind of speaks to, she wanted it to kind of lend credence to some of the other claims coming out from Ashley and Shia.
Did the other two that when they came out, did it only happen after they had heard the first lady talking about it, or was this? I mean, what? And you hear this all the time, and I hate this question, but what took them so long to come out, and why did they finally decide to come out?
Well, with Dr. Allers, she said at the time she didn't know about how to report it, or there wasn't a mechanism for reporting it to the American Astronomical Society, but also that her experience didn't rise to the level of sexual assault or anything like that. It was literally just an uncomfortable and creepy thing from her perspective, that she didn't feel comfortable if he visited her school. She didn't want to be part of that visit. She didn't want to have to sit down at dinner with him after such a weird and awkward experience. And so there was really no reason for her to report it except to her school when he was to visit there, which is exactly what she did. And she got the desired result, which was she wasn't included in that event and she wasn't involved in any way. And they also warned the board members, I believe, not to allow Tyson alone with like a small group of young women.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the rebuttal then real quick about Neil deGrasse Tyson, because it's not like he just comes straight out and denies everything. It feels like he actually acknowledges some parts, but it says that it's a distortion. It's almost like one of the things I remember him saying was that there was, one of them had it was implanted, this thought was implanted into them, and that he had dated the first one or whatever. So it's not that he's completely denying it, he's just twisting it. And I think the part that bothers me about it, and I know people are innocent until proven guilty, and especially in our community, we want to talk about evidence, and I'm all about that. I think what's good about what you're doing is you're just trying to, showcase like why there should be an investigation, why there should be talked about. I think that's what was important. You're not trying to go out and do a witch hunt, and it seems like anyone trying to get to the truth is accused of witch hunts these days. But what's interesting is he didn't come out and straight deny it, but it's weird how he somewhat admits it, but then thinks three different people are just either imagining or distorting things. What's your thought on that? And then maybe you can get into the details of what his story is different than what theirs are.
Definitely. I'm really glad that Neil deGrasse Tyson finally presented his perspective on these, because when I was writing these stories, I contacted him every step of the way before I published anything, because the last thing I'd want to do is publish a one-sided report. But if one side won't speak up and won't say anything, then that's really the only option. And I had to put at the bottom of each one, Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't return my request for comment. I did that with the most recent ones as well. So this is what I've wanted all along, was him to provide his perspective on this so that we can judge everything on equal footing, And so with Shia Ahmet, he surprisingly, for a lot of people said that they were surprised that he had even met her. They thought that she was just making all this up because he was some famous guy. But it turns out, according to him, they had a consensual relationship. He referred to her as a girlfriend. He said that they were dating. She has emphatically denied this on Twitter. She has posted since these media mentions. She's posted on Twitter a few times that he's lying about that, and that she would never willingly or, quote, consciously date him. So strong words on both sides, different views on how that went down. There's definitely an investigation that needs to go down and get to the bottom of that whole situation. With Dr. Allers, I appreciated his response. He said that he wasn't aware that he made her uncomfortable, but he says that's something I would do is look for Pluto. I have a fascination with Pluto. And I think that for her, it comes down to female bodily consent. It doesn't matter, according to her, how interested you are in Pluto, you don't have the right to pull up a woman's clothing and look underneath it in any way. That's not ever going to be a thing. And so that's basically the two perspectives. He's like, well, I was curious. And she's like, well, it doesn't matter. Right. But I did appreciate his reply. And he actually did say he would sincerely apologize to her, I believe, in that statement. So I'm sure she appreciated that. And then with Ashley Watson, I feel like he basically corroborated almost everything I reported, including the strange Native American handshake that she said felt awkward and intimate. He confirmed that she reported it to him the next day, that she quit. So basically there, it's kind of just a difference of perspective that he doesn't feel he did anything wrong. And she feels as though, well, I don't want to put any words in her mouth, but people feel as though a boss shouldn't try to take advantage of a subordinate like that.
Yeah, and what else is weird is when he made the statement that he admitted to saying that, oh, if I would hug you, but then I would want more. I'm like, okay, so what world do you live in that you would think that would be okay? Like, he tried to justify that. Like, that's what blew my mind about it. You know what I mean? He even said that he said it, but he didn't give a rational reason. He just tried to say that he was trying to restrain. I don't know. I was trying to put myself in the position, and I was like, why would you say something like that?
It definitely comes off as strange to a lot of people that I've seen commenting so far who have been reading this. As for what I can say about it is just that I'm happy that it corroborated what I wrote in the first place. Right. And it's important that we get the facts right on these things. And people were doubting it originally because it came from my blog and not from one of these big mainstream sites at first. But the fact is that I got those points right, and that's important.
I find it amazing. And again, this is coming from somebody who also completely respects Neil deGrasse Tyson and was a huge fan, that he says something about, well, you need evidence first. And look, as a skeptic, we know that's one of the things that we drive home all the time. Like, what's the evidence? And I feel like in situations like this, we're trying to get to the bottom of what that is. But I kind of feel like these people manipulate it in a way to say that there is no evidence, that these testimonials are uncredible. And to me, they were super detailed. I think you did a phenomenal job. And again, listen to the interview where he's actually there's an actual audio interview. I'll put it in the link, where listen to what they're saying and the details of what's being said. And again, Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't completely deny this. He admitted to some things about it. I'm like, okay, well, there's the start of the evidence, because that's where we got to start somewhere. And I think you did a pretty phenomenal job of doing that.
Thank you. And that's really all I wanted to do in the first place, was get this story out there so that an investigation can happen and the evidence can be uncovered and we can find out what's really going on. So far, the evidence seems consistent that Ashley Watson felt like she was being come onto sexually by her boss, by her superstar astrophysicist boss, and that she quit the next day as a result. And I feel like that's probably where Cosmos and Fox are going to focus their investigation.
What was your thoughts about Neil deGrasse Tyson before all this? And I'm just trying to show the audience, to be clear, especially in the skeptic community, it's somebody that we truly look up to. What was your thoughts before all this happened?
I don't think I've ever been critical of Neil deGrasse Tyson before. I have multiple shirts with his face on it in my closet right now. I have every one of his books behind me in my library. I have a picture with him that I posted in one of my articles that I took at one of his signings that I was covering, that I got free tickets to cover his event. And yeah, I would consider myself one of his biggest fans, and I'm not saying that has changed. I'm just saying that I felt like it's important to get these allegations out into the world so that they can finally get to the bottom of them, because they've just been kind of bubbling and surfacing occasionally with just Shia Met saying things on Twitter or blogs, and people kind of ignoring it generally, which I don't think is the answer in these cases. I think that even from Neil deGrasse Tyson's perspective, I think that he should want an end to all of this as well. So he might not appreciate the way that it came up, but I really tried to get his side of these things and tried to tell the true story. He just didn't help out with that in the beginning, and he had his reasons for that. He said that he didn't feel like these things should be adjudicated in the media. And in that case, for other people, I would recommend contacting the police yourself and say, this woman is making false rape allegations against me. Please look into this and get this fixed so it's not going to come up again later and ruin my reputation.
Right, right. And I don't know. It's sad. To me, it's sad. It's a sad story. And the reason why I'm glad that you did it, though, and you're speaking up, and I know how hard it was for you to do that. We've had conversations about it. And I think the reason why is, a lot of times we criticize, we criticize religious faiths for doing the same type of thing. And this isn't about religion or non-religion. We're just trying to say that we call out communities of people who stay silent about these type of things. And I think for us as skeptics, our job is to ask questions, and that's what we did. And you had the courage to be able to do that. And we're just trying to show, hey, look, we're holding even our own accountable, and that we're not here just to make a witch hunt. We're just trying to get to the truth of the matter. That's it. Wherever the facts lead. If it ends up turning out that, everything is bullshit, then fine, it is. But as far as I'm concerned, I trust your reporting. I think you're a very, honorable person for doing this. I know you didn't first go out to do that, and I think it lends credibility to it. The women's statement lends credibility. I think there's a lot of searching that people are going to have to do to really get into the bottom of this. And I do want to address a little bit about some of these comments that come up, and then maybe I'll ask a couple of questions from some people in the chat if they're here. But what is some of the? I've been reading some of these comments lately, and they literally piss me off. I feel like a lot more people have taken his side without even trying to understand the actual argument. They haven't really gone into the details. They'll cherry pick like the girl with the dress and kind of say, "Oh, is this the Me Too movement?" Now, what are some of your thoughts on some of the criticism, and what would you like to speak to some of those people with?
Honestly, I really don't have many thoughts on that. I just kind of I stand by everything that I wrote in that article, and everything that I wrote in that article, I personally vetted to make sure that it was true, that it was how these women feel. And I tried to get Neil deGrasse Tyson's perspective on these same situations, explaining in the email exactly what I was talking about. So the instances vary in seriousness, definitely. But at the same time, they deserve to be looked at regardless. And if one of them is true, then they could lend credibility to the others. So investigators need to start looking into everything.
Do you think that people are doing a decent job of reporting it with the clarity? I guess that's maybe what I was trying to refer to is not to necessarily attack the commenters, but maybe there's some misunderstanding about it. Maybe they don't understand the situation. Is there anything? How do you feel that it's being reported so far?
That's true. A lot of people are reading maybe just the first few lines of an article and seeing the allegations from Dr. Allers, who was an astronomer. So I put her up front because of her credibility, but her allegation wasn't sexual assault. It was literally just an uncomfortable and creepy situation. So they don't really get further and read more details. And I've seen a lot of people, even in reports, misunderstanding that there are 3 total allegations here, and they vary a lot in their seriousness, but they all 3 refer to sexual misconduct, and that's what ties them together.
Is there anything that gives you an indication that any of these women have a vendetta, that they're upset, that they're want something from it? I mean, I figure we should I'm just trying to get to the bottom, making sure we're covering all the corners here. Is there any indication to them that there's some wrongdoing at all on any part? I
wouldn't have reported these stories from these women if I got the feeling that there was any other agenda there. But like I said, I investigated further, and none of these people have any reason other than their interactions to have any ill will towards Neil deGrasse Tyson. And their statements don't indicate such. They just really say that they had an uncomfortable experience, and in one case, extremely terrible allegation. But regardless, I just feel like they all have their stories and they all need to be heard. And people are ignoring a lot of that.
No, absolutely. And that's one of the questions actually I'm going to bring. My wife is on here real quick. She says, are you, David, in contact with any of the women? Are they open to being part of a full investigation? I know you talked a little bit about that, but.
All I know for sure is that Dr. Allers has confirmed everything was true in my report, and that she reported it in 2013 to her board. She hasn't spoken to reporters further than that. She says there's no more to tell. I told that story. As far as Ashley Watson's concerned, she's actually done a lot to talk to reporters from what I've read in the media on NPR and the New York Times. She gave full accounts of what happened that went well beyond what I provided. And so I enjoy the good, responsible reporters at those two outlets that really did a good job of conveying her story, and then even following up on it in the case of New York Times, where they spoke with the producer who had dealt with Ashley Watson.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? I know we're short on time today, but is there anything else that you'd like to cover that maybe that you didn't get a chance to, people that you just want to let know when they watch this? I think this is one of the first interviews that somebody's had with you, but just something that you want to get out there as a message to people.
It is the first interview, and the only message I have is that I hope people understand that I am coming at this from an unbiased perspective, and I know that people really want to believe otherwise, and they'll try to twist anything to mean anything, but I feel like I have a responsibility in this case to report the facts as they are and not provide my opinions and not provide my conclusions. I provide the conclusions that were told to me from people involved that I vetted and that I talked to extensively. So I just feel like people are jumping the gun to assume that I'm trying to hurt somebody when I'm really just trying to get to the truth. And I hope that a fair and thorough investigation does exactly that.
And I definitely wanted to stress that. That's why I asked multiple times about it, because I read some of the comments. People think it's a witch hunt about that. I was like, no, I don't think you understand, David. I was like, I had a chance to interview you before, and you're a very credible person to me. And the fact that you're doing this and the bravery for you to do it, and I think you have a right to be heard. And I want people to understand that when they watch this. So hopefully when they get a chance to see that. So
thank you very much,
David. If there's people that want to find out more about you, again, I have your article as a link, and I'll put the YouTube video. If anybody wants to follow what you're doing and find out more about you, where should I send them?
I'm at facebook.com/author David G. McAfee, and on my No Sacred Cows blog on Patheos. Those would probably be the best places.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And thanks for all the hard work. And please, again, people go and do a little bit of research. I hate when people say just go do research, but I'm saying find the articles that I have linked in here and follow David, man. I mean, he's a pretty open guy. Go on his page. If you have a genuine interested question, I'm sure he's open to it. You know what I mean? And I think we want the truth. That's really what it is. This isn't a witch hunt. This is just what is the truth. And this is not an easy thing, people. It is not. And I respect this guy for doing this, and this is why he deserves the attention. So, David, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, that is our show. Again, make sure you follow the links below. I will have the video. I will have the interviews. I'll have everything here. I'll have all the links to David's stuff. And make sure you take a good look at that, because it's a sad situation, but I think it's worth the truth. And that's it, guys. That's our show for today. If this is your first time here, again, make sure that you make sure you subscribe. And if you guys got any comments and questions and you're watching this on the replay, leave me some comments here below, and I'll send them up to David if he's got any questions. I'm sure he's okay with that. So that's our show for today, and we'll see you next week. Peace out.